So who was all here last week to record? Was it just you three?
If you listen to the show, you'd know.
Oh,
I haven't had a chance yet.
Check.
So hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Southern Fried Geekery Podcast, and this is episode 87, which is a good year because that's the year I was born, and I just want to issue a huge welcome back to both Jerry and Sean. Welcome back, guys.
Hello.
You took a hiatus on us.
Thank you.
I was in 10th grade in 1987.
Were you really?
Yes.
I was 7 years old.
I don't want to talk about it.
Jerry,
You're younger than me, so.
I'll be celebrating next episode.
Right. Yeah. It's a good year. It's a good number. So, hey, welcome back to the Southern Fried Geekery Podcast. What this is, if you don't know, if you haven't listened to the show before, if you're new, we are a podcast that we talk about comics and geek culture and those kind of things. Cool stuff. It's good stuff. We meet every Sunday. We gather around. We have a little brunch, if you will, and bless you.
Sorry.
Jesus. Seriously?
And we talk about...
Interrupt the show with bodily functions.
I was on a roll too, man, and I just lost it. No, so anyway, we talk about comics. We get together, a couple of folks from Central Arkansas, and it's good times. So who am I here with today?
Pollen. Matt Trogdon.
Jerry?
Craig Lance.
I'm Sean.
It is the fifth pollen season of the year in Arkansas. So
True.
My sinuses just never quit. I don't know about you guys.
No, year round.
Yeah, just they can't stop, won't stop. So how's everybody's week's been, guys?
It's been a week of change for the Southern Fried
has.
Geekery podcast.
It has. Very, very eventful. Busy.
I did something that scared the shit out of me this week. I fired my largest client this week.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out.
Stand strong.
Nothing but
Fight the power. That's what I say.
That's a big boy move.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was time to shit or get off the pot. So.
Yeah.
right.
I had my first full week of legal classes. I'm a law student. I am tired. That's how my week went. No, it's fun. I'm terrified and excited all at the same time.
Yeah, little spoiler alert. All of Caleb's short stack is going to be law books this week.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's it.
I switched to working overnight now, so getting off at 4 a.m. is wonderful.
I can imagine.
I started Star Trek Next Gen with Stephanie this week. So
I'm glad you had some stress in your life. Yeah.
Are you all right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's tough, bro.
You get to survive that?
it's been fun.
Next Gen's okay. Deep Space Nine is where it's at. So.
What was the one? I remember Caleb made the comment. Was it Voyager? Where Caleb was
Deep
like,
Space Nine.
Oh, that's like Golden Girls in Space.
It's Deep Space Nine. Yeah,
which is why it's the best one.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine is Golden Girls in Space.
Yeah.
I stand by that assessment. It's a good assessment. It's the only correct thing to say.
It's fair.
Matt, you were in orientation all week, right?
Yeah. That was
That's a good time.
pummeled with nerd speak. I picked up on
Yeah, I appreciated that text you sent me.
Yeah.
It was like, what the fuck did he just say? I don't know. Those are all English words, but they don't make sense in the order you sent them to me in. So.
I forget how immersed I am in this garbage. I'll keep repeating it.
Well, did everybody find some time to read some comics this past week?
Barely.
Barely. We made it. We made it through.
I actually, remarkably, firing my client, I had plenty of time to read this week. I got all my books read.
Craig actually read my books for me. He just
For the first time in a long time, I got through my entire read list this week.
Impressive, sir.
while I was briefing cases, I had Craig brief my books, and he just sent me the brief. And so that's actually how I know what to talk about.
Oh, I sent you my briefs, okay.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Oh my!
They were well filled, sir. Well, so let's talk about a few of those, Craig.
You said you needed some, blood samples and urine samples, and so I just sent
I didn't go that far. You volunteered that all by yourself. That was just you.
He goes the extra mile, He'd give you 110%.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what's on your short stack? What good is having a brunch without a short stack, right?
Right.
You just can't do that. So, Craig, start us off. What's on your short stack, man?
Yeah, I read Middle West number 10 by Image Comics, Scotty Young and Jorge Corona. Did I roll that R pretty good?
I liked it.
Oh, nice. Okay.
International.
And this is the continuing adventures of Abel. He meets his grandfather and leaves even more broken and with more answers than he had before he met his grandfather.
Really good issue.
Valkyrie number 2 by Marvel, written by Jason Aaron and Al Ewing, art by Cafu. I'm assuming is how you say his name. As critical as I was about Jason Aaron's run with Jane Foster as Thor, and I want to be 100% clear. I had no problem with Jane Foster as Thor, so don't come at me with your white nationalist bullshit. My problem was the story in which it got there. I'm absolutely loving what they're doing with Jane Foster as Valkyrie. It's really great. Awesome. Faithless #5 by Boom Studios, Brian Azzarello and Maria Lovett. Faith continues her fall into darkness. I've seen this book called Bad Erotica, and I would agree with that because it's not fucking erotica. Yeah. It's about the story of a young woman being corrupted by the devil and his daughter. So if you're reading it thinking it's erotica and calling it Bad Erotica, it's because you don't know what you're reading. So there's that. So it's a good book. It's got one more issue. I'm looking to see how it wraps up. It's going to be fun.
Nice. Jerry, what's on your short stack this week, bud?
Well, other than the 60 chapters of Bakuman that I read.
That's that's on a short stack, sir.
I also read Jane Foster Valkyrie and am completely in love with this book.
Yeah.
No need to say anything else about that. I think Craig summed it up pretty well. I read Vigilantes Chapter 60 from Shonen Jump with Hiyuki Furuhashi and art by Betancourt. It's kind of interesting because Vigilantes is an offshoot of My Hero Academia done in the past, and they're doing a flashback arc right now for one of the characters that are
one of the big characters.
Yeah, one of the big heroes, and they're showing like, a pro hero, but this was like him in school, kind of, coming into like being a badass like crime fighter and everything. So it's been pretty interesting. And then the other issue that I read this week was Guardians of the Galaxy #8. By Marvel Comics, written by Donny Cates, art by Corey Smith, colors David Curiel, and letters by VC's Corey Petit. Their second issue into their second story arc, I can't even remember the name of the church out in space that's like constantly trying to take things over, but it's back in a big way. A good portion of the team got basically abducted by them. And so the remaining members, I think it was Groot and Moondragon, went to go find Rocket to get his help, and he's in a bad way right now. So I'm really
the Universal Church of
Faith. Yeah.
Of Truth. I'm sorry.
Of Truth. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. So it's constantly interesting story being pumped out by Donny Cates. What more can you say?
Nice. I was trying to remember, because we Craig and I locked eyes over the table, and we're like,
I'm like, what? I know this. I know this. No, my brain's hemorrhaging.
There was some Black Ops like hand gestures too. It was beautiful to see. They were on it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Matt, buddy, what'd you read?
So I finished up Deluxe Edition Book 1 and 2 of 100 Bullets from Vertigo. This was on loan from you, Caleb, obviously. Brian Azzarello, Eduardo Russo, Grant Golish, and Patricia Mulvihill. Sure, why not? This was, so I've known about this series for a while, but I am so hot and cold on Azzarello. I never made the effort to pick it up, but this was great. This was very good. This, I think, is my favorite thing I've read by Azzarello. Of course, Eduardo Russo. I mean, he kills it every time. I read Daredevil #10, the Marvel book from Chip Zdarsky, Jorge Fornes, and Jordi Belair. So this redeemed itself to me.
It had some redemption in it.
#9 left me very cold, and I'd really thought I'm going to give it one more issue, and I may drop it. But I really like this issue. I felt like it got back on track.
So I feel like you're low key like quoting Katy Perry songs to us. Because first you were hot, and now you're cold, and I think you're going to be yes, and then you're no,
and then he kissed a girl,
and then you're in, then you're out, and you're up and you're down.
These are all things she says.
Yeah.
Don't play.
It's a hell of lyrics.
She owes me fucking money.
Yeah, it was better than 9, and there was at least some guilt associated with his.
But they didn't hammer on that. They mentioned it. I mean, kind of mentioned it, but obviously I was afraid they were going to spend way too much, and that was going to drag him down and leave her hole in the emo.
I mean, that's who Matt is, though.
Yeah, but he started kicking ass. It was like, all right, thank you very much. and it was told well. I mean, everything was told well. So that's probably more relieved than anything. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, it was good.
Batman number 77.
It's a killer issue.
Yeah. Of course, we all know the creative team on this. But yeah, this one really, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. It feels like Tom King's been kicked in the ass and he's writing a good story again. The cumbersome, repetitive dialogue is gone. I mean, it really feels like the story is moving forward.
I feel like Tom King's mad and he's taking his toys and going home.
That whatever it takes.
He's going to leave Batman broken for whoever comes in after him to have to try and fix. I mean, they'll probably reset the sandbox, but as of right now, that's what it feels like.
I feel like this is the story he's been building.
What I was going to say is this was written a long time before the whole him getting kicked off the title.
Let me have my fantasy.
Okay, fair enough. Okay,
I realize that, but in my fantasy world, he's taking his toys and going home.
Okay.
Let Craig have his headcanon.
Well, Sean, buddy, what's on your short stack for the week?
I got Savage Dragon number 245 from Eric Larson, Nikos Koustas, and Mike Torres. First issue in Savage Dragon, according to my comic book app, in 3 months. And I'm guessing he either spent as much time drawing all the damn chains from this villain. He fought a villain called the Chain Man. He just wrapped in chains. So like, he either spent that or he was correcting people's art for 3 months. I don't know what took him so damn long to put an issue out. Love you, Eric. But it was a good issue, though. I enjoyed it. Also read Hellboy and BPRD Saturn Returns number 1 from Mike Mignola and Scott Alley, Christopher Mitten, Brennan Wagner, and Clem Robbins. Hellboy is investigating a mass gravesite with evolving ritualistic murders and the potential of multiple kind of demonic cults. So kind of a slow start, but I'm interested in it. It's only going to be a 3-parter, so.
I'm assuming this takes place sometime in the timeline before he left the BPRD before.
Well, I haven't read any of the recent stuff, unfortunately, recently, but I know he split from them because he died and went to hell. He had a long arc in there, and I think now he is back.
Well, in the last BPRD, and they rebooted Earth, so I'm assuming that this is not something new.
That. Liz, because Liz did that.
They came back and said that all the stuff that they are writing is in that universe, but it all takes place prior to that happening. Okay. So now we're going to get flashback stories.
Because they did not address that, so I guess that's flashback. And I also read Behind the Curtain, a collection of pro wrestling stories from Jim Cornette. Written by Brandon Easton, art by Dennis Medry and Jordi Esclun and Tom Belong. These are just some of the classic stories. Some I've heard, some I haven't, in the world of pro wrestling, and it's really, really well done. And it's probably gonna be my next book of the week.
Nice. All right. I read in my short reading time, so I was gonna make a joke about me reading law books, but Craig beat me to that one.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, it's okay. It's because
we can still make that joke.
Make the joke. Well, I'll laugh.
I read torts, I read contracts, and I read that other class that I have that my brain quit working and I don't know how to say.
Who writes those comics?
Lots of people, and the art sucks. The art is terrible. Yeah. So that was my joke.
How's the writing in it?
Legal.
Yeah.
It's legal.
Is it all written like in bold font?
No, but it's all highlighted
If you highlight the whole book, it doesn't do any good.
This is what my husband tells me as he critiques my studying habits. So I read a book that reads like an encyclopedia, but a good one. I read the second issue of The History of the Marvel Universe by Mark Waid, Javier Rodriguez, and Alvaro Lopez. And did you guys ever read the OHOTMUs, the official handbooks? This is essentially what this is, and it's just except it's adding in this new continuity. So all the Null stuff that Donny Cates has thrown in there, all the first Avengers stuff that Aaron has done.
Are they staying away from X-Men?
So far they have, yes. I mean, they're there, but they're not like it's just a blip. It's reading like in a timeline. It's telling you what's going on. It's been great. Like I said, the second issue came out. I'm not sure how long it's going to be, but I'm here for this. As somebody who's a Marvel zombie, I think this is excellent. Like I'm loving it.
If they're writing hot move, but okay.
If they're writing about,
I know.
Yeah.
If they're writing about the X-Men, it's already outdated because he's already retconning stuff he put in the new book.
If they start throwing in Moira's fucking timeline, this book will never get finished.
Have you never heard it called that?
I have not.
Yeah. So the thing that used to come out were the official handbooks of the Marvel Universe. Like, if you go online in groups and stuff like that, it's kind of belovedly known as the OHOTMUs. So if you ever hear me mention the OHOTMUs, that's what I'm talking about. It's good stuff, man. I also read Sword Daughter number 8 by Brian Wood, Mac Chatter, and Jose Villaruba. This is a book I read because I'm on it. It's probably not something that I would encourage you to go pick up at this point. The art's beautiful. The story's really slow. This is not Brian Wood's best effort, but it's fun to look at. It's a very quiet book. And then last, but, certainly not least, because Craig and I share a brain, I read Faithless number 5 by Brian Azzarello and Maria Lovett. And, this book is probably my favorite ongoing title right now.
Yeah, it's just really fucking good, ain't it?
This is Brian Azzarello at its best, and it's hilarious to me that we have that his name has been mentioned already for the three of us. At least 3 out of 5 people have read Azzarello books, because it's just so good. And
it really is.
From what he gave us in Batman Damned, this is the Azzarello that I know and love from books like 100 Bullets. It's great. And the art is spectacular. I just can't get enough of Maria Lovett.
Yeah.
It's exactly that kind of almost, I don't want to say perfect because no art is perfect and there's no such thing as perfect when it comes to art, but it's almost like that semi-perfected indie style.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful, man. And yeah, this book has easily made its way up into the book that I moved to the top of my stack. It's my favorite ongoing right now.
Well, I haven't figured out if the devil is trying to corrupt her or make her an artist.
I mean, aren't those the same thing?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really fucking good though.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're both loving that. So we all read one book together, though. Well, I mean, not together. We didn't really meet up at the same time.
That would be interesting. That's what we should start doing for our round table. Sit around and everybody read a page and we just go through
Yeah. It'll be like class, you know, where you read a paragraph per person. You know?
I'll make a Prezi. Yeah.
I'm not doing that shit.
We're all going to bring
will no longer be part
we
of the
can always
round
act
table.
it out and give someone a character. And then
Oh my god. Yeah, let's do that. That would be fun.
We're just cancel Southern Fried Geekery and have the Comic Camp Out podcast where we meet up on Fridays and we grill hot dogs over fire and we talk about books. That's what's going to happen. Yeah, that's what I shoot for.
I'm gonna find us a book that has 5 really interesting characters that are all throughout it, and then we'll just voice act all their lines.
Perfect.
Well, you're probably going to have to come to my house because once The Mandalorian starts,
You're never leaving?
yeah, until I'm done watching it.
So low-key, yeah, so this isn't a news episode by any means, but D23 was this week, and they announced a whole lot of stuff. So running down, we're getting Moon Knight, we're getting She-Hulk, we're getting, like you said, The Mandalorian. They put out the trailer for that. They're doing it.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Miss Marvel. Pretty much Disney laid their dick on the table and said, we are taking over the streaming industry.
Yeah.
And fuck you to all the other streaming industries.
What was hilarious to me in this whole thing is 4 days prior is about the time when it came out that Disney and Sony were having their little tiff and that they were going to split and Spider-Man wouldn't be in the universe. And, nerds were going ballistic. And these are the kind of nerds that I genuinely, I roll my eyes at because number one, go read a fucking comic. But number two, it's just, okay, so you're mad because you don't know what's going on. And they were and that's not the aspect. You get to be mad. I get that. But the ones that were we're going to go protest Marvel. Stop buying Marvels.
No, people are wanting to storm.
Storm Sony.
Is Naruto runners and
Do you think now that Sony has it, they can do a Netflix series now?
No.
So here's the
that would be awesome.
You're welcome, Sean.
Here's the thing. It's not done yet.
No.
Both of these sides are going to come together before the next movie's filmed, and there is too much fucking money on the table.
Yeah.
And it's not about, everybody's talking about the percentages. It's not 50-50 like they were asking. It had to do with who was getting production credit on the story.
Yeah.
And Sony seems to think that Feige is stretched too thin to handle Spider-Man.
Well,
because they made $1 billion off of the last movie. So
I do like somebody did a meme of Austin Powers, and it was Disney, and they were like, oh, we can make billions, and then it shows Sony, and they're like, why make billions when we can make millions?
Yeah, no, I saw that, and that's so. In my personal opinion, Sony made a stupid deal, but it in the long run, it doesn't matter. Like I said, people were storming Sony and boycotting Marvel, this, that, and the other, and then Marvel. like I made it, and it's funny because I made a prediction like before D23. I was like, so here's what's going to happen. Marvel's going to come out and say something like, "Oh, you want some Moon Knight?" And all those people are going to forget about it. They're not going to care. And lo and behold, Marvel came out and said, "Hey, y'all want some Moon Knight?" And all these same motherfuckers were like, "Who's Spider-Man? Like who? Oh, he was there. I didn't know he was there." Like it's just fickle bullshit.
We're getting Night Monkey.
Yeah,
Night Monkey.
I hope so.
It's why companies and people shouldn't give a shit about internet outrage.
Yep.
It's just bullshit.
Do your thing. Do what you're going to do. And people that like it will like it, and people that don't will go away.
My favorite thing
Or
was
bitch about it
the
loudly.
people that said that like Marvel would cave because they weren't going to because Spider-Man was like the linchpin for the next 10 years. And I'm like, number one, did you see Far From Home? Because no.
That's exactly what they yeah.
But also, Marvel's got the biggest dick in the world, and they don't mind waiting 10 years. So, it's just funny. But, yeah.
How much for the Spider-Man? Oh, it's not for sale. How much for the company?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, well, they'll just buy the building. It was just fun times.
Yep.
But, but we're not talking about news. What are we talking about? We're talking about a book that we all read. We are talking about none other than The Year of the Villain Black Mask one shot.
Oh, I thought you said Black Cat. Fuck. I read the wrong book.
Damn it.
No, I read Black Mask too.
Chop my hand at you. Wag my finger. No, this book is, so The Year of the Villain is this, it's a non-event event that DC is doing. I mean, they're putting little backstories in just random issues. I don't know. Like, it's going to culminate in something we just really, it's going to culminate in something that centers on Lex Luthor. But this is the buildup. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is like a Bendis planned thing that's going to show up in his world.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. I mean,
Bendis of it.
hey, look, I'm not judging. We're not there yet. But so what this is in some books, they're putting little 3 or 4 page stories in the back of ongoing issues. And then they're putting out these one shots. And that's what this Black Mask book is. And so we were getting together and we were talking about what books we could talk about. And so we decided that for our family meal, for the main course of our podcast, we were going to serve this up. And this book is written by Tom Taylor. It is drawn, in my opinion, beautifully by Cully Hamner.
Cully Hamner.
Hamner? Oh, you're right. I missed an N.
That's a pet peeve of his.
Is it?
So I wanted to make sure.
Cully Hamner. I apologize. It is colored by one of the best colorists working in the industry today, Mr. Dave Stewart. Letters by Wes Abbott, and a cover by Mr. Mitch Gerards.
Yeah, it was kind of the creative team that made us decide to choose this book.
Yeah,
so.
When I saw Cully Hamner, and Tom Taylor's writing one of my favorite DC books right now. I'm going to emphasize that N from here on out.
Tom Taylor is writing one of my favorite Marvel books right now.
Is he? Nice. Yeah. Which one?
Friendly Neighborhood, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. He's dude's a talent.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like he's making a strong showing in 2019. Like as far as like he's not a newcomer, but I definitely consider him an up and comer. So if we're talking about things like our end of the year Southern Fried Geeker, what would we call those? The Geekery Awards or
I don't remember.
Golden Geekery
the Golden
Awards.
Geekery
Golden
Awards.
Geekery,
Yeah, he might
Thank
be
you,
my.
I listen to the show occasionally.
You do. Well, I mean, and you're instrumental in making sure that we don't go insane. But he might be my choice from for the up and comer of 2019, or the person who like came out of the shell, because he's just rocking it out. So just before we get into the meat and potatoes of this book, what did you guys think about it, Matt? What'd you think about the story? Just thumbs up or thumbs down?
I give it a thumbs up.
Okay, Jerry.
I give it a thumbs up. Black Mask isn't a character that really interests me that much, but I thought it was a pretty interesting origin story.
Nice, Craig.
I liked it. Yeah, thumbs up.
Sweet.
You only give up or down, but it was okay.
Thumb sideways.
Yeah, honestly, it was okay. It wasn't bad. Didn't blow me away.
Oh, we're doing middle ground. I'm probably middle ground.
Okay.
I'm breaking the rules.
How erect
We
were
said
you when you read it?
Oh no! Don't go back to the erection scale.
It was a half master. It wasn't terrible, but it didn't get me there.
I gave it a thumbs up specifically because Black Mask isn't a person I cared about, and I really I found myself enjoying the story.
Yeah.
It was like that. His little backstory stuff was interesting, but all of his like present day stuff, I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
It wasn't really there for me.
Yeah, so let's get into it. So that back matter stuff that Jerry segued us into. So the book starts out, as a lot of books do, it starts out in the past, and Black Mask is essentially telling his quote-unquote origin story to somebody. We don't know who quite yet. We find that as the story goes. But he's telling, and he's essentially starting out with his childhood. Now, Black Mask is inherently, if you take away from this, supposed to be like the antithesis of Bruce Wayne. He was a 1% kid. His parents owned a company, but they weren't the kind of parents that Thomas and Martha were. They were kind of all show and no substance as parents. Apparently they owned, and I didn't know this, they owned a big, I was going to say pharmaceuticals, I'm sitting next to Matt, a cosmetics company.
Matt would like to point out he doesn't sell pharmaceuticals.
Yes, I would like to make that clear.
Or own a pharmaceuticals company.
Correct.
And let me have my headcanon, Jerry. So, you know, as a kid, he's looking for this attention and this love from his parents that he's just not getting. And so he comes in, you know, he finds this like, I guess it's like a old dog or deer skull or some shit out in the woods. And he comes in, he's like, Mom, look what I found. How awesome is this? And Mom and Dad are getting ready for this kind of socialite event, and the Waynes are going to be there, and everything's got to be perfect because they have to be the perfect family on the outside. It's just, and they're kind of ignoring him, and they're like, well, you need to go get ready for this event. We don't really give a shit about this thing you found in the woods. And he's just like, well, I mean, I am ready. I'm just going to wear this. Cause he's in like, you know, he's in a little t-shirt. He's got his baseball hat on. He's just a kid, man. He's just trying to be a kid. And his parents just degrade him. And not only do they degrade him, his dad gets physically violent and slaps him around a little bit, like damages his face. And, you know, when this happens, if you read stories or you watch movies where one of the parents does these things, traditionally the other parent kind of rushes in to the rescue, right? They're like, no, hey, it's a fucking kid. Don't do that. You're a bad dad. Mom, on the other hand, just says, no, not the face.
We have company coming. Why are you hitting him in the face?
Kick him in the fucking ribs. They can't see the bruises under the shirt. Like she does, like, you know, this kind of
just thing really, we own a makeup company. Just
really graphic depiction of child abuse in this book. And so, yeah, she pulls him aside and she starts putting foundation on him. They're getting his color right. There's a little contouring. They're drag queening. No, they're just hiding the,
I was like, what's happening?
They're just hiding the bruises of the effects that his dad hit on him. And the whole point of this story is to really just drive home the fact of why Black Mask hides his face. Like why he doesn't show why he took, canonically wood from his mother's coffin and made his black mask. And he's telling this to a cop. And he's telling this to a cop that he's holding at gunpoint inside a bank, who is a hostage, who is the last person left.
Which is fucking great,
it's,
by the way.
Man, and you know, they're getting to know each other a little bit. And just they're having
the cops really giving him information.
There's this little report. I think his name was Frank or something. There's Gary. What was it?
Gary,
yeah.
Gary the snail.
Gary Frank. That's why that word association came in. Did you just go full SpongeBob on us?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thanks.
Good job. Yeah.
Did you just go full SpongeBob?
Yes, that's a thing that happens.
What a question.
I was going to mock him too, but just because the SpongeBob memes.
There's always a good there's a SpongeBob meme for everything. It's kind of like Trump's tweets. There's a tweet that goes against everything he does. Anyway, back to the Black Mask book. A different sort of villain, if you will, that was mistreated by his parents. So they're in this kind of armored truck that Black Mask and his goons were trying to rob, and things are not going well, as you might imagine. All of his henchmen are outside. They're dead. The cops have shot them. And Black Mask and Gary Frank SpongeBob are trapped inside this armored truck. And they're trying to figure out a way to get out of this. There's this drone, like you start seeing this shadow, and it's an odd shadow. It's not like a cloud. There's like, you can tell this is a mechanical sort of thing with like arms,
drone-ish looking.
And so it's floating over, and who knows what this is? Who can say? I can't say at this point. I don't know.
Renee Montoya couldn't either.
Yeah, she didn't know anything. So she's there with the cops. She's like, what's happening? And they're like, well, do we shoot it? And she's like, well, do you know if it's going to explode? And the cop's like, well, I don't know if it's going to explode. And why the fuck would you shoot it? I mean, they don't know what it is. So this drone swoops down and it kind of hovers over this armored truck, and it just like a laser beam, you know, speaking of Dr. Evil, the laser beam. It starts cutting into the top of the truck. Well, Black Mask is not expecting this, and he thinks it might be the cop. So he goes ahead and he just shoots poor little Gary. R.I.P. Gary. He was a good guy, man. I feel
for those two panels.
Yeah, like I really got attached.
I hurt when Gary got shot.
I really got that kind of did. I was rooting for Gary there for a minute. So Gary dies, and this kind of projection shoots out of the drone, and it's Lex Luthor. So if you've been keeping up
as
with
a Force Ghost,
yeah, as like a Corvus Glaive Force Ghost. And why does he look like that? Well, he looks like that if you've been keeping it. Was it Superman or Action Comics that this has been taking place in? I forget because I don't
know because I quit reading them.
Yeah, in one of those Bendis books, Lex says he's not the suit donning.
He's dead.
Bigwig socialite. Yeah, he's gone, but he's not gone. And he shows up and he's talking to Black Mask, and he's like you're thinking too small. Like you're trying to get this small influence over like what, the mayor of New York. You want to be a 1%er with these millions of dollars. Why, when you can influence like history, you can influence the entire. You could be like a very Machiavellian figure. You could run the world.
He laughs at the 500 million.
I was going to put that out there. That was probably one of my favorite panels. Is whenever he said he's worth 500 million, and Lex just kind of chuckles like, "I'm sorry."
literally says that's cute. Yeah. So he gets this drone. So after they have this conversation, and at the end of the day, what Lex is saying is like, dude, you're surrounded by the cops inside an armored vehicle with like dead mercenaries and also dead hostages. I'm your only ticket out. And so Black Mask is like, you right, fam, you right. And so this drone kind of swoops up and like locks him in like a roller coaster seat, which looks really uncomfortable for Black Mask gonads because one of the steel tentacle arms like comes up and like suctions to his crotch area.
Black Mask is into that shit.
I think he might be, yeah.
And I don't think Lex Luthor cared.
Do you know what the drone is designed after?
What's
Yep.
The headquarters of the Legion of Doom from the Super Friends
cartoon.
Okay.
Which is what they've been in the Justice League book. Is
Have they worked on that too? Yeah, but it's a throwback.
This same drone is showing up in all the villain books.
Yeah. I just thought that was cool.
Yeah. I did not know that. So thank you. And so they escape. They pull him out. That's when you find out like he's talking about his face, his mask, and they've got work to do. So that's when you get the information about him carving his mask out of his mom's coffin. He's like, I'm not like, this is who I am. And Lex Luthor goes, well, you can still be that, but it's time to put on another mask. They've got plans. From there, the story goes to Atlanta. They get out of, assuming they're in Gotham, they get out of Atlanta, and there's a knock on a door. And we're talking Atlanta penthouse high rise. And this guy answers the door, and he's in his bathrobe, like he's not expecting company, and somebody's delivering a package, and this is at night. Like this is not something that was supposed to happen. And the guy who answers the door, he's just like, how did you get up here? No one's supposed to be able to get up here. Everyone's supposed to have to like go through me. And like the person delivering the package is kind of this, shadow clad, mysterious, like it's very tropey.
Their face is obscure.
Yeah. It's you can't tell who it is. And then he kind of takes off his hat and he's like, oh, well, they did check with you. And it's a doppelganger. It's that other guy. And he opens up this toolbox after he pulls a gun, opens the toolbox, and there's all of these like torture instrumentations. Essentially what he's going to do is he's going to cut off his fingers and like get his DNA. And what you're led to believe, and what you do find out that this is Black Mask. He is going incognito.
They turned him into the chameleon.
Yeah, pretty much. But who else is in Atlanta? Like, he gets out of Gotham because Batman's going to be there. They've got stuff to do. So surely Atlanta has a hero, right? Surely Atlanta's got somebody who's going to, it's a big city. There's crime there.
I know it's where the players play.
It's what I hear.
It's where Batwoman went to.
It is. Kate Kane. She shows up, because, her and Batman they don't see eye to eye.
Well, they had a falling out after she killed somebody
she killed Clayface.
Yeah.
She put a bullet through Clayface's brain. And that's a no-no in Bruce's book. So she's there, and the more I think about it, she has to be kind of new in town. And so this has got to be happening right after that. Renee Montoya has an uneasy feeling, and it also is, they don't point it out in this book, Renee Montoya is also the question. Right. She has an uneasy feeling about what's been going on, like Black Mask and all of his henchmen and everybody have been like disappearing, and she has followed a breadcrumb trail to Atlanta, to where her ex-lover or current lover, I'm not really sure, they don't really know, they're in the middle of something, relationship-wise, to where she's at, and Renee's just like, yeah, no, it's like something's up here, like there's this corporation, and like they've started replacing all of their board members, like this. it smells fishy. And like everybody from the Black Mask's world is gone. And I need your help. I need your help to figure this out because something's wrong. I think something's up. So they start spying. They start doing a little bit of investigation. Batwoman is probably the second best detective in the universe, in the DC universe, in my opinion. She's Bruce Wayne without the safety net, so to speak. And so as they're looking through all of the, Kate's doing the behind the scenes stuff. Renee is like doing the upfront stuff. She's trying to talk to people and they devise a plan. But they miss the mark on something. So they go to this public figure, this person who owns a penthouse and is in the top of Atlanta high rise and is the CEO of a corporation. And they think he's a target. They're about 3 weeks too late, but, so they worm he gets in the automobile and they're like, no, seriously, your bait, Black Mask is coming after you. Except he's already in the car because that's who he is. He actually gets the drop on Renee Montoya and, shoots her in the arm. These things are not looking up. Well, fortunately, because it's Renee and because of where they are, Batwoman's looking after him and she swoops in, busts through the door. They fight, they struggle. But at the end of the day, because of their relationship, Renee is Kate's main concern. Like she's distracted by this relationship. So they kick Black Mask out of the car and she goes to stop the bleeding and everything and Black Mask escapes. At the end of the book, you see another figure who people are gathering around. There's this kind of beard clad man and kind of watches. And as he walks off, he holds his hand up to his face and in a very, very Clayface fashion, since we mentioned him, sucks the face into his fingers and it's the Black Mask. And that's kind of where the one shot leaves us. That's where they have to go from there, figure out what's happening.
The end question mark.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Renee Montoya is the question right at this current time in continuity. She was a detective in Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
Is a detective in Gotham right now because one of the things she says is she's out of her jurisdiction. I don't think they've established her as the question yet in Rebirth.
Well,
unless I missed something.
The question for that is in the Lois Lane book that they're writing, because she is the question in that book.
Okay.
And she's working with Lois Lane but the thing is, we don't know when in time that is. We know it's after John. It gets older. We know that book takes place after they go off into space.
Well, and the question is an event of Leviathan right
Mm-hmm.
now too. So I don't know again where all of it falls into the timeline. Renee's going to definitely become the question, but yeah.
So
anyways,
in one book she is, in this book we get no sign. I think you're supposed to bring a little bit of that baggage into this, or maybe Tom just thought that was too much. Maybe he was dealing with.
Well, I mean, as the question, she wouldn't have cared what city she was in, to investigate, and she said she wasn't in her jurisdiction, and that's why she needed Batwoman's help because she didn't have jurisdiction.
Yeah, so. she's just working as a law enforcement officer. She's trying to stay on the up and up.
Yes. At this point in time.
I don't know about you guys. I dug Cully Hamner's work.
Oh yeah,
in this book.
Yeah,
it was spectacular. Every panel, there's so much there poured into.
Yeah, I dug it.
I loved the art. I love the coloring. Of course, Dave Stewart's just amazing at coloring books. So.
Sequentials were great.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was laid out well.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about the art was good.
In my opinion. The story, the art, everything. It was a really good little one shot.
One of the things that we didn't get too far into was his backstory and how, whenever he first meets Bruce, one of the things that he talks about is how perfect Bruce is and his smile and everything like that. Well, then whenever he sees him at his parents' funeral, he's not smiling. So then he gets this idea to murder his own parents. And that's whenever he gains his smile and his face. So it's really interesting to kind of think about those, because Bruce was always smiling and he was always frowning, and then when Bruce lost his parents, he was always frowning.
Well, it's flipping the script on his parent, right? There's this trail of abuse and comparison to Bruce that his parents drove home and instilled in him as a norm. And so when Bruce became an orphan, and also the people that he hates the most are the ones who told him to be like Bruce Wayne, he makes that happen. Right. And when Cully Hamner drew that panel, and he's got baby Black Mask, which Black Mask a child, all blacked out in front of this burning mansion, and his hands are up in the air. Mm-hmm. I choose to believe in my heart of hearts that he actually drew him like flipping off the house,
right?
And then
had to go back and not do that because his fists are up just perfectly. Right. No, I mean it's just.
Corn!
It really does just like Tom does this really, really great job of it's almost the Jeff Lemire thing, right? Like he takes comic book tropes, he takes really comic booky stories, makes them fun, makes them in the spirit of superhero stories, but also interjects really, really truthful psychological relevance to them in a way that not many creators, there's some that go about the business of doing that, but not many creators are apt to do. And at least, maybe they do it once, but they don't carry on.
To take what I consider to be a B or a C list villain and make me care what happens to him in a book, I think is pretty outstanding. My question is what the fuck kind of wood was his mom's coffin made out of that it's like malleable to his face? Like,
I think
it's like the mask from Jim Carrey's The Mask. It looks like wood and he puts it on and it form fits his face and moves to his.
Yeah. Well, I think that part, like you talking about whenever he was changing faces and stuff like that.
No, I'm just talking about the actual black mask itself is malleable.
He had one
to
at
his
one
face.
time where the actual like jaw part moves. And
well, I say there were no moving parts on this mask, but I mean, you can take different pieces and solder them all into one solid. Like it's more a helmet than anything, really. Like I said, this version at least doesn't move. You can see his mouth moving behind the mask in one panel, which had really good detail into that little.
Well, I really like the character of Black Mask, and I really wish he was used more because he's a really simple character. He's a street thug, so
with a lot of money apparently.
Yeah, well, I felt the writing the characterization felt a little off for me for Black Mask because he's a street thug and he felt like he's kind of a jokey guy when he's, that felt a little off. I like the comic overall. Why Lex Luthor would get this street thug and try to put him in this position of extreme wealth and power. I was like, well, I guess we'll find out the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, there's a reason, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I wish we saw more Black Mask in the Batman universe.
Well, I mean, his whole thing is like, he's not some grand villain with schemes. All he wants is money and power, and it's easier for Lex Luthor to manipulate someone like that than someone like the Joker, who's just a completely wild card who doesn't really have any big.
Well, we can't have more Black Mask stories because we have to be on the rotation of Joker, Riddler, Penguin, Hush, back to Joker, Riddler.
Well, and just to piggyback what Matt was saying, yes, and like he's the street thug who won on some level. Like he worked himself up to prominence. So it's kind of like when I think of the Penguin started off as an orphan, but ended up owning casinos and became very much a one percenter. Like I think of Black Mask in that way. Like, and I've read enough Batman that I've seen Black Mask before, but at least in the current zeitgeist of pop culture, they're kind of showing Black Mask as this very, this influencer, this very much a, pinstripe suit and almost a 1%, but still maintains that street credibility. So like if you played the Arkham games, Black Mask, he was a baller. Like he's this, I equate it to like the hip hop, like current state of hip hop. You've got these guys that start out on the street corner, but they really want to show you how they've got Ferraris now. They really want to show you how, gold chains and diamonds, and that's Black Mask. Like, think of Jay-Z. Jay-Z's not a businessman. He's a businessman. Like that's this idea of street wins. Like we started at the bottom, now we're here. That to me is who Black Mask has at least been for the past 15 years.
Well, it's weird because if that's the way, in fairness, I haven't read much with Black Mask in it. I think the only book I've read recently was Red Hood that he was in for a minute. But if that's the way he's been being written, it makes no sense because he comes from a family of wealth.
Yeah.
And he should have. The fact that he's a street level villain is a choice, not not because he has to go rob armored vehicles. He's choosing to do that.
No, for sure. He also didn't have an Alfred.
Yeah.
He does, but he still has wealth.
He's
coming from that family. He owned so he does that. The villainy he does out of a want to, not out of a necessity.
Well, he's not. He's streetwise. He's not. He could never take over his family's cosmetics industry and run it as an empire because he's not that level of smart. He's a thief.
I'm sure that he probably isn't running the company, but the amount of wealth that his family had already obtained when they were killed.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, he's not gonna. He couldn't maintain that.
Yeah,
and he doesn't want to. He wants to be a street thug, and he likes to torture people. That's what he likes to do.
Yeah.
And that being said, his parents seem like the kind of people to leave their fucking money to like somebody else. So we don't know what was in their trust.
There is that.
Did you see my first week of law school coming out there? What was in their trust? You see that? Yeah. Fucking expert.
Fucking welcome to the law podcast.
You got 3 years of this, folks.
So normally, what we do after we wrap up like a family meal conversation, we go around the table and ask if you're going to add this onto your pull list, this, that, and the other. But because this is a one shot, we don't have that option. This does encourage me to do a few things. It encourages me to look at the other Year of the Villain one shots. And at least judge them by the creative team. But it encourages me to always pick up a book with Tom Taylor's name on it, and encourages me to always pick up anything that Cully Hamner draws, because I think it's great. So what about you?
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Nice.
I will definitely pick up some more of the Year of the Villain one shots, depending again on who's on them.
Yeah.
Not to just reiterate what you said, but yeah, exactly.
But I will.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I did, is just reiterated what you said. No, of course, yeah, it's how I feel now. I didn't really know what the story was with the Year of the Villain, and I haven't really cared, to be honest with you. So
that's interesting. Is anybody else really paying attention to that?
No. And it kind of felt like the reason why the level day, like nowadays stuff, is because that's probably the editing department was like, this is kind of the sequence that we need to happen. This is where we need him to end up. But he got like kind of more free reign in the past stuff. And I think that's why the present day stuff sort of fell flat with Sean and I.
Yeah.
It's like, I said, it was a solid book. It's just, I couldn't really bring myself to care too much. Like I said, the origin was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily like when they give someone who's such an established street level villain superpowers. I mean, granted, it's just, as far as we know right now, just morphing his face, but didn't really do much for me. But I've got a friend who's a big Black Mask fan, so I'm actually going to be gifting this comic to him. So.
All right, nice. Well, what good is a main course if you don't have sides to go with it? Just not. You need some biscuits. You got to have some gravy at brunch, some mimosas. Jerry, I'm calling on you first, buddy.
Oh boy,
what you bring to the table?
So as you all know, Absolute Carnage is going on right now, written by Donny Cates.
What is
Absolute Carnage?
Who? First I've heard of it.
He's about to get a side shoved down his throat. So anyway, the whole thing that's going on with that is Cletus Cassidy's corpse has been injected with the Carnage symbiote combined with the Null personality. So he's gotten all the powers of Null, and he's still, crazy monstrous person. He's going after all these, like everyone that's ever had a symbiote before. With the Null powers, he can, mind control most symbiotes and people. So he's been attaching Carnage symbiotes to everybody and mind controlling them. So we've been seeing a lot of this reoccurrence of, all of Venom's history, all the symbiote history. And the books that, they've been doing a lot of one shots. Last week they had, Scream that came out by Colin Bunn. And the other one that they had was Separation Anxiety, which is my book of the week. It's written by Clay McLeod Chapman, art by Brian Level, color artist Jordan Boyd, and letterers VC's Travis Lanham. The story picks up everything that's going on with Carnage right now is taking place in New York City. This story takes place in the suburbs of Carrington Cottage, Colorado. We open up with a little girl crying on a porch and a dog, a German Shepherd, walking down the street and, coming up kind of looking like it's going to console her, makes her a little bit happy. You find out the reason why she's crying is her parents don't get along. They're actually arguing in their house right now. And that's because, they're always at each other's throats, and the mom has decided that she's going to pack up and take both the kids with them and move out.
I was going to say, she's not the head of a cosmetics company, is she?
No.
Okay.
So the little girl cheers up a little bit, decides that she's going to go in, and the dog's being a little persistent. So she's like, all right, well, you can, come in until we find a home for you, but be quiet. And as she's walking this dog through the house, you see her parents just at each other's throats, just screaming. The dog kind of stops in the room where the parents are. Our hero here, little Susie, goes up to the attic where her brothers hang out, and he's reading, all these comic books and everything. And she's like, hey, you got to come check this out, this dog out. And when they make it down the stairs, they get this horrific scene of a Cronenberg-esque situation with the dog exploding and symbiotes coming out of it, and covering the mother and father. Now, it turns out, back in, I think it was like the 90s, whenever they had, I can't remember what the Venom storyline was, but they essentially took the Venom symbiote and created more symbiotes out of it. They created Scream, Lasher, Riot, Agony, and Phage.
Was that Lethal Protector?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was towards the end of Lethal Protector. Apparently the last time we saw them, and I wasn't aware of it, but it was in a Deadpool storyline. Scream is, its own thing. It's away from these four. They have had issues. One of them would end up killing its hosts. So what they did is they combined into this thing called Hybrid, and apparently have been, moving around as this dog. So the dog finds itself at this home. It takes over the dad, and we get this horrific scene of the dad just completely encompassed in it. You see the spiral, so that, this, carnage null control is going over it, and it's going after the kids. You get this great scene of the kids just like running away. Mother gets covered in the phage symbiote. That's the purple one. And then they're just chasing these children to this house. Like, it's just great horror, because it's just absolutely terrifying to look at.
Horror.
We get a scene where they finally capture the kids, but there's a knock at the door. So, the mom kind of like fixes herself up, has the symbiote hiding behind her, and opens the door, and the neighbors are like, hey, I was about to mow my lawn, I heard screaming, so I figured I'd come over. And the mom's like, oh, I'm
going to guess that was a white person.
Yeah. We're just, he's wearing an American flag shirt that says Team Builder. Yep. So the mom's just like, oh no, we're just, having a good time. Would you like to come in for some lemonade or something? It's freshly squeezed. And all of a sudden the daughter comes out and is like, please help us, like screams. And as soon as she says that, the mom spits acid in this guy's face.
As you do.
Yeah.
This is why you don't get to know your neighbors, folks.
Bad neighbor.
If you're screaming and you live next door to me, I'm sorry.
I don't want to completely spoil the outcome of it, but there's some pretty messed up stuff that goes about. There's a very unsettling scene of a family dinner and neighbor's body splayed out on the table. And then, the story ends with a family trip to New York City.
Oh boy.
It's been very impressive. Like, this came out the same week Cullen Bunn put a story out in this, and he's like the master of horror right now, right? Horror. Yes, Craig. Did I say it right?
I'm not trying to correct you. I just want to make sure that our listeners don't think that we call everything horrors.
I'm okay with that.
But no, I wasn't really expecting much out of this. Yeah. Because, they're just, whenever a big event happens, they just pump out the one shots and the offshoots and everything. And so it's like, what do I read? This actually really surprised me. I don't know, like, off the top of my head, if I've read anything that any of these people like, what?
I was thinking while you were reading that off, I'm going through my head, and it's very rare that I ever read a book, and the only person I'm familiar with is the letterer.
Oh yeah.
And that was the case with this book.
Like if if this same team did any other kind of horror series, I would absolutely pick it up.
Yeah.
They did a great job. They did all the really cool stuff with paneling that I like, where they just, use the page. They use spirals a lot.
So it's all 9 panel pages?
No.
Okay.
But they use,
Mitch.
they go into spirals a lot
Yeah.
on it. And, there's even some pages where, she's trying to escape and it's kind of, done in a spiral. So you read it from the outside of the spiral to in. Whenever they get to that dinner scene, it's a double page spread, and it's
Hey, Wendy.
like they just.
It's
fantastic. The colors that they use in it.
You guys would really like this
Yeah,
if you could see it, if this was a visual medium.
Yeah, it was real fantastic. They even put a little bit of dark humor in there. I would completely recommend it. I mean, I would
the art
recommend
looks
this.
fantastic.
I would recommend this
seeing.
on its own, even if you weren't reading Absolute Carnage.
You should snap a picture of that and send it to me or something. I'll put it up on the
we'll put it on the
Instagram
page.
Yeah.
I'm down. But yeah, separation anxiety kind of took me by surprise last week.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really good.
Very cool. So you'll be happy to know that I read Absolute Carnage, number 1. I do not like Venom.
Right.
I am not a mark for that. I thoroughly enjoyed that book.
Yeah, it was good.
I think the art in it was gorgeous. I thought everything was beautiful. I don't like the way that, I went blank. Who drew that book?
Ryan Stegman.
Yeah. So I don't like the way Steggy draws Spider-Man because he makes him look like Deadpool. That's the only complaint I have. I think it looks great. I just don't like the aesthetic that he does with the eyes. Yeah, it's not for me. That's the only complaint, man. I thought it was a great story. First one that in this kind of genre of the Marvel world that I've really enjoyed.
And they've really been doing it as a horror story. And I think it works really well as, that kind of event too.
I typically don't fall for Carnage stories because they generally let me down, but that one was good. So
yeah. So I want to go next for 2 reasons. Number 1, I've got a book that I think really works well following that book of Jerry's. Also because little inside baseball, I know what Craig's book is and there's no way in fuck I'm following him today. It's just not happening. So the book that I want to tell you about is Death's Head. And this book is written by Teenie Howard, Kay Zama, Felipe Sobrero, and Travis Lanham on the letters, with a cover by Nick Roche and Felipe Sobrero on that, doing the colors. So I wanted to talk about this book because much like Jerry, I went into this book with no expectations or very little. And to me, maybe that's the right way to read comics, because every time that happens, I would say a good 75 to 80% of the time when I go in with no expectations whatsoever, I enjoy my experience. I don't know. Do any of you guys know about Death's Head? Do you have a history with that character?
yeah, I've read some of the English, what did they call them back in the day? MK.
Marvel UK.
Marvel UK, yeah. I've read a lot of those and a lot of the Excalibur books and that sort of thing, Captain Britain. And Death's Head's been in those series.
Okay.
And actually had a couple. They had a Death's Head 1 and a Death's Heads 2 back in the day. Yeah. So which version is this? Is it Death's Heads 2 or
this is Death's Head 1, but also they're playing with other versions. So, and this is the reason I asked, because I don't have this baggage with this character. I don't have this background. So I had to go do some Googling. So I went to the interwebs, and there's this really cool website that I like, and they did not pay me to say this. I'm just giving them a shout out because they're helpful. Although if they would like to send me a check, I can send them my address. And it's Comics Vine, and they're like an online wiki they got bought out by GameSpot. And they're a great resource to find out where a character came from, what issues they've been in, all of this fun stuff. So I went and did some searching on there, and just to get my bearings, because I really don't know this character. And so Death's Head is this he's a bounty hunting robot from the future. And he's
metal as fuck.
He's amazing. The depiction of him, every depiction that I see has been great. He first showed up in Marvel when Marvel had the Transformers IP. Yeah. In fact, that's like his first appearance was this Marvel Transformers one shot from Marvel UK, in 1987. Again, great year, right? That's the year I was made. That's the year Death's Head was made. It's a beautiful year. It's the number of this episode, so it's fitting. It's the way it goes. I plan these things, right? I don't. This just happened that way. So How he isn't considered under the Transformers IP, I don't know. I guess that's maybe because he got out of the Transformers and started showing up in the regular universe. But I mean, also, so did things like ROM and they had to go to IDW.
Weird stuff like, Thanos, his first appearance is in Logan's Run.
Yeah.
I mean, there's weird things that got mixed in with other IPs back then that are not considered part of that property. So that's one of those. For
sure. So anyway, he is part of the, like, Marvel has him. They get to use him, and they just haven't for a long time. Well, Teenie Howard is this new, like, not new writer. She's been going, but I really been digging her stuff. So that's why I picked up this book, and they're on issue 2 right now. So issue 2 is what I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to dive back into issue 1 because you got to know what's happening. So Death's Head has made this deal with Yondu. Yondu from the Guardians of the Galaxy, blue guy.
Mary Poppins,
yeah, Mary Poppins, motherfucker, red mohawk, really, really cool, not cool, but cool guy. So he made this deal. Yondu pays for Death's Head's upgrades, right? Like they have a credit system work out. And in return, Death's Head brings Yondu his bounties. So Yondu goes out, does the bounty hunting work, brings them, and then pays off his debt for all these mechanical upgrades that Yondu fronts for him. But the problem is Death's Head's not living up to his end of the bargain, right? Like Yondu has newer, better, sexier robot bounty hunters that are bringing in more. So he's just constantly getting this debt that he's fronted sitting there. He gets a little pissy about it. And so when Death's Head, like he puts out a hit on Death's Head. And so Death's Head shows up and is like, Yondu, what the fuck, man? Like I work for you. This is bullshit. And Yondu explains to him how, you're not living up to your part of the bargain. And they basically kick Death's Head out of a cosmic trash chute. Just launches him into space. He goes down a wormhole. Cause all of this actually, as it turns out, is taking place in another dimension. And Death's Head lands in New York. Like the wormhole opens up, he falls into a New York dumpster. It's great. The impact knocks him offline. When he wakes up on a stage at a rock concert. And this band, which by the way has a keytar player, number 1. So you're dealing with quality.
It's a good band.
They have made that.
Matt and I both just kind of got the same look when you said that.
Can you hear my frown, people?
That was said with a level of facetiousness that was supposed to come through the microphone. They have made him their amplifier. So he is like the centerpiece amplifier for this little garage band with a keytar. And he wakes up in the middle of the concert. Well, he does not appreciate this.
I was going to say nothing would piss off Death's Head more than being an amplifier for a keytar.
Yeah, no, he is not happy.
Me as well.
He is not happy. You just don't want keytars in your life. The world needs more of them. More keytar. Naturally, it's like cowbell. You got to have more. Naturally, Death's Head trashes the set, right? Like he's not. This is not the experience he enjoys. He's just like, show some fucking respect. I'm Death's Head, and he just like he wrecks the place. But among the members of the audience, and this is where I really got excited. If you know me, there's a couple of characters. I'm tropey. I'm a gay dude. I love gay characters. 2 of the characters that are out in the audience are Billy Kaplan and Teddy Altman. Who, if you don't know those names, it's Wiccan and Hulkling. From the Young Avengers. So, like, as soon as I see them and see those names, I'm like, oh, yay. Yeah, here we go. This book is for me. I can't wait to talk about this.
Guitars, gay characters. This is right up Caleb's alley.
It's new wave as fuck. Like, Boy George is going to make a cameo at some point, and I'm going to lose my shit. Wiccan and Hulkling spring into action, right? And Magic... Wiccan magics Death's Head away. Like he uses his powers to disappear Death's Head, and Teddy's like, so you send him to like another dimension, to a hellscape, locked in prison, and Billy's like, no, he's locked in our bathroom at our apartment. Oh. Which by the way, they just moved into, like they just moved in together. They haven't been doing much superhero work lately. And in the downtime, this is depressed Wiccan, right? Like he misses the good old days. Something you need to know about Wiccan, he always kind of has this huge inferiority complex, what I call imposter syndrome. Like he never feels like he's really supposed to be there, which by the way, as a law student, I understand those emotions. Cause I also don't feel like I should be there. And he's been using his powers to essentially Google himself across the multiverse. Like he can see all space and time, and he can see what different versions of himself are doing. And this is not a good idea, right? Like you shouldn't, like you already have enough as any individual has enough to live up to. They don't need to put that added pressure on themselves. Well, he does. And he finds one universe to where he is an Avenger. He's a full scale, like big dick, big wig hero. What he wants to be. And like he's on this team and they're like some of his Young Avengers counterparts are on there with him, but you've also got characters who are like the current young folks, like the Champions and Squirrel Girl is on there. And I loved it. There's even a reference to an A-Next figure in there. So do you guys remember A-Next?
I remember the name.
Oh, so. It's great. Yeah. Alternate versions of like the kids characters. So yeah. Yeah. It was great. And so most importantly on the team though, there's this very youngish, hip looking, kind of has like swoopy side dreadlocks like Killmonger had, version of Death's Head, as a member of this team. So while this is happening, the Death's Head that's got knocked out and is locked in the bathroom, he wakes up. And again, last time he woke up as an amplifier. This time he's waking up in somebody's bathtub. He's having a bad goddamn day. Like, I feel bad for the guy. Give him a little credit. He starts trashing the apartment. By the way, there's no way these guys are getting their deposit back at all. Like, their deposit is gone.
Yeah, that sucks for them.
They're just not. Teddy picks up a mattress too. I don't know what he's going to do with it. I guess like throw it at Death's Head because Death's Head he's a late 80s, early 90s character. He's got giant machine guns. Mattress isn't going to do shit, but I guess he's going to throw it at him. I don't know. Underneath the bed, Wiccan has hidden the Death's Head's body from his vision that he had. And he's hidden under the mattress. So where did he come from? Like, how did he figure this information out? Where was this? How does this Death's Head end up here? Well, it turns out, and Wiccan found this out through his word magic. There's this doctor, and her name is Evelyn Necker. And one day in the future, she's going to create a character called Death's Heads 5. And this is canon. Like, this is actual Marvel history that Teenie Howard's playing with here. A few months prior to the story, to this story's main timeline, she was working for AIM. And she had gotten a hold of some extra-dimensional, older, kind of rock'em sock'em robot, gladiator fight footage of Death's Head, like, being in the arena and beating the shit out of people. And she gets the bright idea she's going to make this because, sentient robots can be used for the good of mankind on Earth. Right? Now,
says an AIM employee.
This is a bad idea. Right? Like, you should be understanding a few things here. She got her hands on an early version of Death's Head's body and she's just pumping upgrades into it. So that's kind of where issue 2 kicks off. We're back in New York. Teddy and Death's Head, they're making some, like, Billy makes some waffles because that's what you do, and they find out Death's Head doesn't eat food. They're like, where did he come from? And Teddy used his powers to teleport this version of Death's Head out of the AIM lab and underneath his mattress. This is a good idea. All right, this is you can see how nothing can go wrong. No, these dudes, like these two Death's Heads, wake up. They have little brother syndrome out the ass. They have a squabble. They wreck the apartment again. Fortunately, Billy had called for backup right after the original fight outside of the concert. And finally Kate Bishop shows up. Hawkeye too shows up. She neutralizes the situation. It took her a little bit to get there because she lives in San Francisco right now. She's got her own team out there that even though they're not in the book, I choose to believe they're still active. And also there's a land shark named Jeff involved. I need this to be a real thing. She kind of neutralizes the situation. She wrecks shop. She beats the shit out of one Death's Head. That's not enough. So she shoots the shit out of another Death's Head. She lets them know who's boss. And she kind of breaks them in the process. So they need upgrades, right? So they get the bright idea that in order to function and in order to stop bad things and to get back to where they need to go, they need to go back to the lab, to the AIM lab where they were pulled out of because they know that there's extra spare parts there. And that's where they can get their upgrades. So in a stroke of pure brilliance, more good ideas on behalf of Wiccan, he transports them all into the lab where Dr. Necker springs a trap because in this universe, she is actually evil and she's an asshole. And she just kind of, like, that's where issue 2 ends. She's just like, oh, yay. Like, you did exactly what I wanted to. Your memories of the other version of this, Dr. Necker, is wrong. Of course, all of this happens before, Convergence. Like, you got to go back to Hickman's Avengers stuff. All of the old school Death's Head stuff happens before Convergence. So all of that happens in another universe where Dr. Necker actually was not benevolent, but she had good intentions. This Dr. Necker's not. She's bad. She's real bad. And she wants to make murder bots. And now she's got 2 of them who are fully functional, including one from a future alternate dimension, trapped with Wiccan and Hulkling and Kate Bishop, and bad things happen. And they're going to happen in issue 3.
amazing.
Is it kind of like the bootstrap theory, like with Terminator, where like they didn't have this original idea until this thing came from the future and gave them this idea?
Very
and
possibly.
they created it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Kind of
there's
a-
no original origin of it.
Kind of a cyclical event. Yeah, no, totally. Teenie Howard writes great stories. I've been falling in love with Teenie Howard. The thing that gets me on this book is the art, though. And I actually brought this for Jerry because Jerry's love of all things robot means that he has to read this book. Kei Zama, and again, I did some Googling. He's worked on some other stuff. He's drawn some Transformers. Dude loves robots. He has a very early 90s manga style. Or I don't know if that's the right way to say it. He has got a very early 90s anime style that he brings over here. So all of his robots are, lots of parts, lots of lines, lots of intricacies. In my personal opinion, I don't care for the way that he draws people as much, but it's that style. Right. Like there's this one part where Kate Bishop makes a joke about a cat and her face turns into a cat. Like it's got this very feline aspects of it. If you can imagine shows, if you ever watched cartoons like Digimon, when people get angry and they turn into almost like smiley faces, just big eyes, big round mouth, they lose all facial features. They just look like an emoji. He does that in some of this book, but the other times it's very detailed. That's not typically my thing. In this, I enjoy it because number one, you're giving me characters that I care about. Number two, I love the way he draws the robots. It's a very early 90s Transformer feel. It's solid. Coloring, the coloring is the weak point for me. No shade on Felipe. I've seen him work before. I think Sobrero does really good work. In this one, he's trying to do too much with too little. The line work is great. The coloring it brings it down a little bit. I would prefer to just see the lines. I did that thing, like I said last issue, where I'd like take a picture of it and then put a black and white filter over it to see if it's what it's making me feel in just the line work, to see if it's maybe not the pencils that I'm digging or whatever. And I dig the pencils. It's straight up the color work that it washes it out for me. But it doesn't make me lose interest in the book. I mean, like I said, it's still a great book. And I think that the people listening at home, I think you all would dig it. Check it out, man. It's good work.
How many issues is it supposed to be?
I want to say it's going to be a 6-issue series. It could be 4. I don't really know. They may say in the book. I'd have to check. I have no clue. Not enough. Not enough is the correct answer. Because if it stays this kind of fun, if it stays this energetic, then I'm on board. I'm sold.
Awesome. I may have to check it out.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, I can go last and bring us all down too. We'll end the show on a low note.
Do we want to? Let's all cry in the middle. Why don't you go, Craig?
I don't want to cut Matt off.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'm going to go first. No, so I'm doing Captain America number 12. So this is a current run book. I usually go back and dig up an old book that I try to get people on. And I thought about doing that this time, but I'm trying to break my own cycle of doing really intense, violent, dark stories. I thought maybe I'll break that cycle. Let people know I do have other interests. So on that note,
wow.
Captain America, again, I'll say is a character in my whole life I've never cared about. I actually had disdain for this character most of my comic reading life.
You just don't like the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, I had Boy Scouts exactly the way I called it. It was like, don't give me that Boy Scout garbage. I'm not reading that. Well, I like to tell myself I've matured.
Personal growth.
It took me to get into my 40s to do so. I was a late bloomer, but I've matured. So, what's going on with this run? This is following the Nick Spencer run where the Hydra Captain America took over the United States, and then Steve Rogers had to make his return. So following that, him bringing down Supreme Commander, as he was called, a new threat emerged known as the Power Elite. And the Power Elite has framed Steve Rogers for murder, the murder of Thunderbolt Ross, actually. So once that occurred, Steve turned himself in, and he was sent to a privatized prison run by the Power Elite member Wolfgang von Strucker. But fearing for Steve's life, Sharon Carter recruited the mysterious Daughters of Liberty and to break him out of that prison by inciting a riot. So now Steve is free, and this is where the issue picks up. Now Steve is free, but after the Power Elite's propaganda machine declared him and the Hydra Supreme Commander to be one and the same, the question of his safety is up in the air. So the issue picks up where, Cap is free, so now he's going out and he's kicking Hydra ass. But the problem is now the public thinks he's the Supreme Commander once again, so they're like, well, what's going on here? It's painting, so now the people that he attacks, it paints them in a sympathetic light. Because, he's basically seen as the greater evil.
Yeah.
The issue picks up as showing footage of that, and Nick Fury being caught up to date on it, and basically being told, look, we've got to bring Captain America in, because we don't know which one this is.
Right.
And Nick Fury doesn't believe that Steve Rogers is the Supreme Commander, but he's duty bound, so he commits himself to bring Steve Rogers in. Following that footage happening, which essentially was real time, we see Steve go back into essentially his apartment where he's in hiding, and he's living with Sharon Carter. She's worried about the fact that he is a wanted man for the deeds of the Supreme Commander. And again, going out into public and fighting these battles is only making the situation worse. And she's trying to convince him that that is so. And, he's telling her, well, America needs Captain America. And she's trying to convince him that you cannot be Captain America. Captain America, in the eyes of the public, is dead. It doesn't mean the same thing.
Right.
So this issue is him coming to grips with that and trying to figure out what he's going to do. So he actually recruits the Daughters of Liberty to join him, because he tells them that the wounds that have been opened by Hydra are too severe for him to tackle on his own. So he needs a team. But, what he also has to do, and what he also comes to grips with, is that he cannot go out in public and do what he does as Captain America, because he's only going to make the situation worse. So the issue wraps up with him dropping the Captain America moniker, the shield, and the uniform. And he is now determined to go out, fight the same battles, but he's going to do so as Steve Rogers.
Oh, dang, I thought you were going to say Nomad.
I bet it heads that way.
It's kind of that same feel, but yeah.
It feels that way, but it's, it's Steve Rogers doing his thing. So
I have a question on this, because I read this as well. In that last panel, he drops his regular shield, but he does have another shield. It looked to me like it was the laser shield.
It's gotta be.
Actually, exactly.
It's gotta be. It's exactly what it looks like.
So we're on the same page?
Yeah. I was
okay.
like, did he take the laser shield?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it looks like it.
This to me is Marvel with a big FU to all the people that were pissed off about the Captain Hydra stuff. And I'm glad that they're doing it.
Yeah,
and
same here.
Ta-Nehisi Coates is writing it amazingly.
Yeah.
This has been a great story.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, Adam Kubert, and Matt Miller is the creative team on it. It's great. I mean, Adam Kubert, for Christ's sake. I mean,
I was going to, on that note, though, this is the first Adam Kubert book that I've liked in a really long time. Because, I'm not going to say he fell out of favor, but he was uninspired. I'll say that. His art was uninspired for a hot minute. Somebody lit a fire under his ass, because he's just going for it with this book.
I assume that he really likes this character, and that's just coming out in his work.
Well, so my question with this story, not to change the subject, but my question with this story is the Hydra version of Cap was in prison last we saw him.
He escaped.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, he did escape.
Do you know when that happened?
It was earlier in this run.
Okay, I guess I must have missed that because last I remember
it was a one shot in the Thor event that happened.
Oh, okay. No, my last remembrance of him was Deadpool actually visiting him.
Yeah.
So, anyways, okay.
No, he did. He escaped.
So he's out there somewhere. So Steve's going to have to bring him back to justice, essentially, to save his name. Is what's going to happen.
What you can assume. Yeah, I mean, it's a great jumping on point. Is the reason I bring up this issue specifically. What's going to come next. I mean, it feels like it's going to create some major waves in the Marvel universe. So,
how incredible are the Daughters of Liberty? I love this as like this clandestine team. I think it's great.
Yeah,
and that's the same group that helped him when he was being imprisoned, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It's the same group of women.
Yeah. Which I know. Let's see. We've got Susie. She's on the team. Trying trying to think of who else is in there. I'm sitting here talking about how great of a team they were.
Spider-Woman.
Yeah.
Misty Knight.
She's in there. There are none of the mutants that I know of because Jean's not on the team.
No.
Of course, Sharon Carter was. She was Agent 13. Yeah, I mean, it's a great team. Anytime I get Misty Knight, I'm happy. So
Anytime you get Misty, you get Misty.
I do. It's like the Amazon, except it's not on fire.
Oh, God.
References.
Pain.
Topical.
Visible Woman.
Yeah. So, got anything else you want to add to that, bro?
Get on it. It's good for you.
Yeah, it's a good book. I've been enjoying it.
Are those who's doing the covers on that?
Alex Ross.
Is it? Yeah.
And they're awesome. Per the norm.
Fuego.
I love when Alex Ross does Captain America covers.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, he did it for the Brubaker run. It was
Man, they're
amazing.
Freaking great.
Yeah.
All right, Sean. What you bring to the table this week, man?
I'm going to go ahead and let Craig so we go up on an upbeat.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go up. Mine's going to be kind of quick. So.
Okay.
Okay. So the book I'm going to talk about is a little book. It's actually a small graphic novel. It's called The Adventures of Parker Reef. As far as I can tell, it was self-printed and published by Chris Campana. Art and story by Chris Campana. I found this book because another creator, and I don't remember which creator it was, to give credit to him, but they shared it on their social media as a Kickstarter campaign. And I went to the Kickstarter campaign, and the title was The Adventures of Parker Reef - To Save a Soul.
Mm-hmm.
And it said a story dedicated to the girlfriend and son I lost. So, I was able to pick up both the colored and the pencil versions of the comics from the Kickstarter, which the pencil is beautiful as well. And we got these nice little wristbands that Caleb and I are both wearing. We'll get a picture for you guys out there. Going to kind of break a rule that we have on this podcast, which is where we don't read from the comic, but I'm going to read the introduction page.
Okay.
It's the dedication and intro page. For Tana and Parker, people will tell you that love cures all. I'm here to tell you that they are wrong and they're right. Love is the best way to set yourself up for more pain than anyone should suffer, and it is the only way to get through that same pain. I was never one for greeting cards or romantic gestures. Tana said I loved in my way, which is really just code for her loving me unconditionally. She never asked for anything, never judged, just loved. Together we were a force. Together we would have been loving parents to our boy, Parker Reef. Like I said, love can hurt too. So, this story is Chris telling the story of what he thinks Parker is currently doing on the other side. And a brief synopsis of the story is Parker is now a teenage boy, and it's his birthday, and he lives with his dog, James, and his mother, Tana. Parker and Tana have a nice life, but you very much get the sense that they are both missing Chris, the lost love and father. And at one point, Tana says, "Oh, Parker, sometimes we don't get the ending we want." And I think that line sums up this entire story more than anything else. So, throughout the book, you never get a clear picture of Parker's face. You never see his face. There's always hair hanging across his eyes, or the shadows covering his face, or he's got a hoodie up and you can't see. And that's done because this is Chris imagining what his son would look like as a 13-year-old boy at this point. And so, Parker and Tana are having all these conversations about his father, and she says, "Well, I've been back to see your father, and I brought these items with me, and one of them's this action figure and his pen, and you know, they're just having all these real heartfelt conversations, and Parker's like, "Well, I want to go see him. If you've been, why can't I?" And she said, "Well, I don't want you to go. It's dangerous. You have to go through the nothing, and it's super dangerous." So Parker runs off and goes through the nothing anyways. But before he leaves, he takes the two items that she had brought back. She takes the action figure named Gigantic and his dad's pen that he used for creating comic books. And so he heads out into the nothing, which is obviously a very dangerous place. And on this journey, this demonic spirit flies and picks him up and carries him off. But you hear all these things in the background saying, "Stay with us, don't leave us, stay with us." And the spirit flies him to this woman who tells him that if he were to fail this quest to get back, he would be lost in the nothing forever and become a tormented soul. But he's already made his decision and it's too late, so he can only go forward. So the spirit, the demon, takes and drops him off in the middle of the nothing, and he starts off on his adventure. Some monsters attack, like troll and goblin looking things attack him, and he's really about to get killed when all of a sudden this big, gigantic thing comes to us to save him. Mm-hmm. And it turns out it's his dad's action figure has come to life to protect him. And then after he protects him, it shrinks back down into a little action figure again. It's like, "Hey, can you pick me up?" Blah, blah, blah. And they go on, and something else comes out, and he's like, "Hey, can you save me again?" He's like, "Nope, I have to recharge." So he takes his dad's pin and draws a sword in the air, and now he has a sword, and he fights with that. So with his dad's stuff, he travels through the nothing, and finally he gets to the end and reaches the Soul Guardian. And the Soul Guardian gives him some rather bad news that, he can't go any forward. There is no returning. And I'm going to leave it there. I want you guys to read this book because it's, as a father, this hit me really hard. When you're done reading the book, read the back matter to the book, because it gives you the tragedy that befell this family and what happened to cause this pain. And to Chris, I just want to thank him for having the courage to share the story with us all. I cannot possibly fathom the pain he has been through and is going through and the grief he's suffering. I hope that there was some small amount of therapy that he got from putting this story together.
Yeah.
I have to say I love everything about this book. The art, the storytelling, everything about it is done really great. And you can tell it was absolutely a labor of love. And
with emphasis on the labor, man.
Yeah.
It's just
trying to work through this story when you're telling the story of a lost child and lost girlfriend that died during childbirth.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what this man's going through. And it's a fantastic book. I loved it so much. I actually went and signed up for Chris's other Kickstarter book that he's doing right now, which is called Chosen. It's a sword and sorcery epic adventure. And I'll share that link on our Facebook group.
Okay.
Caleb, on our Facebook group, I've shared the link where you can go purchase this graphic novel. If you'll put it in the show notes so people can find it, that would be great.
It'll be in there, man. It'll be in there.
It's a haunting book. It's a great book, but it definitely hits you in the feels. If you're not feeling it at the end of this book, you need to really question your humanity.
I mean, if you don't,
I'm afraid to read it.
I mean, you can back up on that. So you let me read this book, right?
Yeah.
Number one, I'm going to quote Ed Piskor and say, "Fuck you forever, man." I didn't make it through the fucking introduction without turning into a blubbering piece of shit. Yeah. Like, I was openly weeping. And then you turn the page, and the dog that you mentioned is a Boston Terrier.
Yeah.
I have a Boston Terrier. So
I sent you a picture and said, "Hey, look, it looks like Jezzy."
I lost it at that point, too. The emotional content aside. Like,
you take all of that out of it. The story's fucking fantastic.
The quality and the craftsmanship that he put into this book, you've got a double metaphor. You've got a metaphor within a metaphor that works. That's a rare thing. I know people who have been working in the comic industry for 50 years that can't do a double metaphor in a book and pull it off. The line work that he does is beautiful.
The art is so amazing in this book. And I got some of the prints from this that came with it. Absolutely amazing.
It reminds me a lot of the work that's being done by Jorge Corona.
Yeah.
It's all, like, it's not the same, but the line work is very Corona-esque. Like there's a lot of similarities in the way that his son is drawn, in the way that Abel is drawn. There's some very similar line work being done there.
And the way the son's drawn is almost a miniature, because in the comic you never see him. He shows himself in this book. Chris draws himself in the book in some references and things like that. But in modern Chris, he's wearing a hoodie all the time. You never see his face either. There's a lot of kind of going back and forth there on trying to figure out the way his son would look. And then at the end of it, he draws a portrait on the last page of what he believes his son would look like as a teenager. It's
And at the end of the day, the book is a tool. It's that metatextual element that I find so fascinating, and it's what I love about the sequential medium, because I don't think you can really do it with anything else. The book is a tool. It's a tool for him to use to work through his grief. It's a tool for him to use to not work through his grief.
Yeah.
It's okay to not get to the other side of that.
Yeah.
And he also has it so it can maybe help someone else in a way that maybe it didn't help him. And again, you're getting into things like using the superhero genre. Like, there's lots of comics where people are doing excellent work where they're dealing with humanity and emotion. There's not a lot of comics where they take and they use the metaphor of the superhero genre as a metaphor in the story.
Yeah.
That double whammy that he does there is just like, when I read that, I'm just like, let me make a note, because I want to do this someday. Right? Like,
if you get through this book and you don't like gigantic at the end of it,
he doesn't have a nose.
He doesn't have a nose. And he's thankful for that, because he would hate to smell the decay that's going on around him. So I actually went to his page because I reached out to Chris after I read this book. First, to thank him for writing this book.
Yeah.
Second, to get where I could pass on the information to give to our listeners where they could find this book, other than, obviously, he's going to be selling them at any conventions or anything he's at. So he gave me his website, and I went there, and they have a statue of Gigantic there, which I purchased for my collection.
Nice.
As a last, I know this is yours, but I just wanted to say.
No, it's fine. That's why I was wanting you to read it, was to jump in and we could have some.
From an aesthetic and artistic standpoint, I was floored and blown away by the way that the art degraded on the last 2 pages of the story. They take all the elements of, like, your color, your shading, your inking, and in the last 2 pages, as you're going through it, it just degrades. It degrades to the bare elements of what comic art is and to what this story is, and it just ends. And that move, that craftsmanship was excellent.
Yeah. And, going back to what she said, you don't always get the ending you want.
Right.
And I think that's been the journey through, without speaking for Chris, from what I get from this book, that was the journey that I think he's kind of had to come to terms with at this point. And as somebody that's lost people in my life, it never gets easier.
Yeah.
But you think about it maybe a little less every day. But,
right.
It never gets easier, and that grief will always be a part of you, but you'll find the strength to move on.
Yep.
Or not move on, but move ahead in your life, I guess is
carry on.
Carry on is a better word. So best of luck to you, Chris.
For sure, man. All right, Sean. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
I told you to go first.
No, I know. I didn't know what Craig and you had read, but I felt it was heavy. So,
is your story about a kid with cancer?
Well, so Spider-Man goes see it. No, all right. I'm going to take you guys back a long, long time ago to the far distant past of 1998. I'm going to talk about Crimson #1 from Cliffhanger Studios, subset of Image Comics. Written by Brian Augustine, art by Humberto Ramos, inks by Sandra Hope and Chris Ellermore, colors by Alex Blairat, I know I messed that up, Ian Hennon, and Robert Rowe of Badass Studios. And I think that's what every studio should fucking call themselves.
They did in the 90s.
Right? Letters by Amy Grenier. This is it's a book, came out back in 1998. I've been interested in it for a long time. I know Caleb read the trades here recently, right?
I do. A friend of mine and a friend of the show actually sent them to me. I'm trying to think. Forgive me if you're listening to the show and you're like, hey, that was me, you asshole. I don't remember off the top of my head who it was, because it's been a while.
Well, no worries. But this is just a comic I've been wanting to read for a long time. But it's actually what put Ramos into my world and seeing his art in Wizard magazine back in the day. But this is the story of Alex and how he eventually becomes a vampire. It starts with the Book of Genesis, actually. It goes into creation, talking everything from just how God made the earth and the sea and the land, cuts all that, and he even goes into the smaller details a lot of folks don't want to talk about. And like, that's actually in the Bible of like the first man before Adam and Eve, which is a big key to this whole storyline. Goes into the dragons that existed on there. Like I said, a lot of stuff they don't want to cover, which I fucking love. And it shows into how there was the first men who ended up working with Lucifer after the war in heaven. And this is where we get vampires, which I know I've seen that in some stories before, but not used nearly enough. And I fucking love the use of that. Cut to modern 1998. We got Alex and his friends, and I'm not making this up, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, out in Central Park at night. Just being teenagers, kicking it. Alex is not getting along with his parents, so he's out there with his friends trying to blow off some steam. And they encounter a group of vampires straight out of the Blood Ray from Blade #1 movie. And all the awesome. And like I said, this is some of Ramos' art is what dragged me into like wanting to find this series. And thanks to our local comic book shop owner for selling me the entire run for a very cheap price. The vampires proceed to bloodily rip apart Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and Alex is barely trying to escape. The lead, who is a black woman wearing nothing but a leopard print fur coat with no undertop, but she has a couple of X's covering up her nipples so that you can get through that. Like I said, 90s as fuck, right? Bites Alex, but they're making sure that we don't want them to turn. We're just going to eat them so that we have no competition for our hunting ground. So he got bit already, but she's about to tear him apart. An old bearded man, like, basically intimidates the shit out of them and makes them leave. And you find out he is one of the first men, the original vampires. And he's wanting to kind of trying to convince Alex what he is. He's helping him, for some reason, we don't really know yet in this story why. But Alex doesn't want to accept it. And he's like, tries to leave at first, but it's daytime. So he immediately gets set on fire, returns back in. And like I said, he runs into another vampire whose name, unfortunately, is escaping me because I did not put it in my notes. But he's learning about, by the end of the first issue, he's kind of starting to accept that, okay, he is what he is. He's got the hunger. He's starting to feel like that. And that's pretty much just the first issue of the big symbol. A big chunk of that was the book of Genesis in the beginning of this, which, like I said, an underused issue, because I believe they even mentioned Lilith in the beginning of it. Mm-hmm. Like I said, a lot of stuff that, in vampire lore, far to my knowledge, I know Craig's read a lot of vampire, and I think Caleb has as well. They don't use that very much. I think the biblical ties to vampirism.
Well, this little background, and this if you remember 98, the way I remember 98, this book draws a
coke-filled haze.
Please don't make me. I wasn't quite there yet. That was more like 2004. This book draws a lot from the mythos of the White Wolf Vampire the Masquerade game.
I was feeling that.
In that game, in that world, Lilith was the mother of vampires. So they basically, and I love this book. And I remember it was Brian Newberry who sent me the book. Right. And awesome. And he's actually been on the show before. So, great guy. Love him to death. And I love this story to death. This story is derivative. Mm-hmm. This story is essentially Homies meets Vampire the Masquerade.
Which is why I fucking love it, to be honest.
So, no, I was just going to add on to what Caleb said, which is that Lilith in Jewish lore is actually, she was a succubus and is actually the mother of vampires in Jewish lore. She's not in the book of Genesis, but
she's mentioned in one line later in the Bible. I forget where it's at.
The Jewish people very much believe the story of Lilith, though, as part of their culture.
And part of that lore, and if I'm not mistaken, is that once Cain was cast out, Lilith actually found him and helped him.
There's a lot of belief that in I'm not Jewish, so I'm going off of what I've heard, that Lilith is actually the mother of Cain.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's why he was jealous of Abel, because Abel was the full son of Eve.
Yeah.
But to go back, and honestly, what Caleb has said, he's absolutely not wrong. Like, you read this book, it feels like the late 90s again, from the street dialogue to the designs and the clothing. And that's honestly, this is that period of time for some reason. This is right when I got out of high school, and I love this shit. I still have a bag collection of Homies. So like you said, Homies with vampires. I'm like, that's up my alley.
Yeah.
So like, it feels very much of its time. There's even an ad for Jinko jeans.
Yeah.
I look at Jerry directly, but I'm pretty sure Caleb's just as guilty.
I had them.
Which also advertised Jinko comics, so that's something you need to start hunting for in your bargain bins. But yeah, a lot like the big draw for me is the art. It is what put Humberto Ramos on my radar, and it's his older style, which is still very much of the '98, where anime influence I think really started kind of blending into the Western comics, and I enjoyed that. But I mean, the writing. It's stylized. It's like I said, it's Blade One as fuck. You know what I mean? And I mean that for me at least in all the best ways. If that era for you was a good time for like the the lingo, the street.
Well, when you say
you can look back fondly, if you can.
When you have to separate it. When you say it was '90s as fuck, we're not talking about like Liefeld and Sylvester '90s as fuck. This is a whole different
like street, like hip hop,
yeah.
like very much like these guys are like it is a vampire story, but it's very street level. So like you said, you get a lot of that lingo, a lot of like the writings and like so the lettering for it, especially was done in this very particular.
It's a Limp Bizkit cover album come to life.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it so much.
I bought it when it came out. I did not pick up issue 2.
Oh. That's not surprising, man. And like I said, I'm not saying this is for everybody out there, but if you got, like I said, if you, if what we've said sounds good, other than what Matt just said.
No, if you were,
I'm kidding.
If you were a White Wolf kid, it's right up your alley, man.
Right. Like I said, if like I said, Vampire Masquerade was your jam, Homie's Little Figures, and like I said, the Limp Bizkit, the new metal era, which was
sounds like Matt stuff.
It was my shit in 1998 when I'm getting out of high school and can actually afford to buy things for myself. I'm digging it. I'm only one issue in. I said I've got the entire run. I'm looking forward to reading and seeing more Jinko jeans advertisements, hopefully. But and also advertised, like I said, there's also Joe Madura's Battle Chasers. Like this is that era where I think the big thing also that I liked about it is that this is where this book really shows in the late 90s when anime influence started really getting into art designs and Western comics started embracing that. So to that end too, I also highly recommend it.
Faux show.
Nice.
Yeah, I put my stamp on it too. Good stuff. So all right, we ready to bring this thing home?
Well, we got to talk about our.
No, yeah, we're gonna set the menu for next week. Yeah, ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right. That was mainly my way of saying anybody else have any final thoughts about their books,
no, I'm sorry.
All right. So the way we like to end a show is we like to give you guys some pointers as to what you might do well by picking up on Wednesdays. Which is New Comic Book Day. So this next Wednesday, we are going to be, new books come out and we'll all converge at some way on a local comic shop and somehow to get new books. And these are the ones that, at least 5, that we think you would do well to pick up. And the first one, I'll start off. The first one's Pumpkinheads, #1. And this is actually an OGN. It's a graphic novel, and it's written by Rainbow Rowell, who I know Sean is a big fan of, and Faith Aaron Hicks is doing the art. And this story it's not Pumpkinheads in the idea of the horror book. If that's what you're thinking of, that's not this. Deja and Josiah are seasonal best friends. Every autumn, they've worked together at the pumpkin patch, and they say goodbye every Halloween, and they're united just this keeps cycle happening year after year. But this Halloween is different. It's their last Halloween at the pumpkin patch. They're both getting older. They're both going to move on. And Josiah he's ready to spend the whole night feeling melancholy about it. Deja is not ready to let him. She's got a plan. What if instead of moving on, instead of the usual singing, Lima Bean, this, that, and the other, whatever, the stuff that they do at the pumpkin patch,
this, that, and the other.
They're going to go on an adventure. And you can get this in a soft cover or a hardcover.
Nice.
And I think you do. I can't wait to read it, man. It looks like one of my weird books. So I'm excited. Craig, what are you reading this next week?
I'm going to take us back to vampires. Angel number 4 from Boom Studios. Brian Hill's actually writing it. Gleb Melnikov and Dan Plorosian are also on it. If you liked Buffy and you liked Angel, or if you just liked Angel like me and didn't care about Buffy, this has been a really interesting take on Angel. I've really enjoyed the run so far. So,
nice. Yeah. Matt, what are you grabbing this next week?
Mountainhead #1, IDW Studios by John Leese and Ryan Lee. So the synopsis on this: Abraham Stubbs and his father Noah roam America in a nomadic existence, convinced they are being pursued by sinister government forces. Noah has them living off the grid, burgling houses to survive. Elsewhere, on Mountain Rector, the lone survivor of a climbing expedition staggers homeward covered in blood. Both are on an inevitable collision course with the picturesque Canadian resort town of Brayrock, I guess is how you pronounce that.
It sounds like our buddy Matt that owns Kapow Comics wrote that story.
I don't know about that, but I got Mountain Head from a guy named Noah once, and it was excellent.
Oh my god.
It was great.
Oh my.
That story's not true, but it'd be a lot cooler if it was. Sean, what are you reading this next week, dude?
I saw a title that I absolutely had to look into. It's called Tommy Gun Wizards. This is from Dark Horse Comics, written by Christian Ward and drawn by Christian Ward. Synopsis for it is: Elliot Ness and his team of untouchables work overtime, taking on dangerous criminals that hide in the seedy underbelly of 1930s Chicago. Except in this world, Al Capone isn't dealing alcohol, but in magic. With Lick, a drug that grants magical powers to anyone who ingests it, mobsters become wizards. Ordinary men become monsters, and darker secrets than Ness can imagine lie in the heart of all.
Lick is a magical
one,
drug for me.
Sounds interesting to me.
Lick is a magical drug for me.
All right, Jerry, what's on your menu?
To nobody's surprise, Venom number 17 comes out next week, and this will be our first issue of Venom since Absolute Carnage started up. And it looks like it's going to be tying directly in from the separation anxiety issue. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get all those fun little family of symbiotes that we saw in this issue are going to be popping up in Venom this week.
I'm glad you reviewed it, so I know why they're there.
Yeah. Fun stuff. So. Knew we weren't done with it. It didn't feel like we were done with them yet. Well, all right. Well, guys, ladies and gentlemen, folks at home, that's our show. That's our show for you guys today. We hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed doing it. We hope that you have enjoyed it so much that you are inspired, you are driven to come find us in the other places that we're at, like our Facebook group, where we're Southern Fried Geekery on the Facebook page. We also have an Instagram page and a Twitter page, which Ahoy Comics just followed us on. So that makes me happy. You can find both of us. You can find all of us on there at SFG Podcast. Let's see where else we got. We got a YouTube page. We're doing stuff with. We're kind of all over the place. If you want to shoot us an email, you can do so by putting it at southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com into that little send bar, and you can let us know what you think. If you would do us a huge solid, a major favor, go on YouTube or wherever you download the podcast. If there is a way that you can recommend and or like the podcast, do so, because it lets people know that we are something worth listening to. It also lets those algorithms know that they should bump us a little bit, and we need the help. So, because we're not good at doing this ourselves. We don't know how. So, share with your friends.
Self-promotion's hard.
It is, and we're all busy. Share with your friends, and man, other than that, just go forth, love some comics. Woo!